The morning sun cut through the Detroit skyline like a blade, casting long shadows across the sprawling industrial complex of Morrison Auto Works. The air was thick with the smell of motor oil, gasoline, and the metallic tang of welding sparks that had soaked into every brick and beam of the facility over its 43 years of operation. Inside Bay 7, the largest repair station in the building, Thomas Morrison stood with his arms crossed, watching his team of mechanics circle a 1967 Shelby GT500 like vultures around a carcass they couldn't quite figure out how to consume. The car was a masterpiece of American muscle, or at least it had been before its owner had attempted some amateur modifications that had turned the engine into what Thomas could only describe as a mechanical nightmare. 3 weeks. That's how long the Shelby had been sitting in his shop, and his best mechanics, men he'd trained himself, men with decades of experience under their belts, had made virtually no progress. "Mr. Morrison," the voice came from behind him, young and uncertain. Thomas turned slowly, already irritated by the interruption. Standing in the doorway of Bay 7 was a young woman, maybe 24 or 25, wearing oil-stained cargo pants and a faded black tank top beneath an unbuttoned flannel shirt. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she carried a worn leather tool bag that looked like it had seen better days. What struck Thomas most, though, were her eyes, bright green and filled with a mixture of determination and nervousness that made her look like a boxer stepping into the ring for the first time. "Can I help you?" Thomas asked, his tone making it clear he had no interest in being helpful at all. "I'm Jamie Sullivan," she said, taking a step forward. "I'm here about the mechanic position. I spoke with your assistant manager, Rick, last week. He said to come in this morning." Thomas felt his jaw tighten. Rick, of course. His assistant manager had a habit of making decisions without consulting him, and apparently hiring inexperienced kids fresh out of community college was his latest brilliant idea. "Rick isn't here today," Thomas said flatly, "and I'm afraid we're not really looking for—" "I know what you're going to say," Jamie interrupted, her voice stronger now. "You're going to tell me you need experienced mechanics, people who've proven themselves. But Mr. Morrison, I've been working on cars since I was 12 years old. My dad owned a small garage in Flint before he passed away 3 years ago. I learned everything from him, and I've been working at Quick Fix Auto ever since, but I need something better, something where I can really show what I can do." Thomas studied her for a long moment. The Quick Fix was a chain operation, the kind of place that did oil changes and tire rotations, but rarely touched anything requiring real skill. It wasn't impressive, and her speech, while earnest, didn't change the fundamental problem. She was young, female, and in his experience, neither of those things indicated she'd be able to handle the kind of high-pressure, high-skill work his shop demanded. "Miss Sullivan," he began, keeping his voice level and professional, "I appreciate you coming in, but Morrison Auto Works specializes in classic car restoration and high-performance vehicle repair. We work on vehicles worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions. Our clients expect perfection, and frankly, I can't take a risk on someone without a proven track record in this specific field." Something shifted in Jamie's expression. The nervousness evaporated, replaced by a look of barely controlled frustration. "You mean you can't take a risk on a woman?" she said quietly. "That's not what I said," Thomas replied, feeling his own frustration rise. "This has nothing to do with— Mr. Morrison, with all due respect, I've heard this my entire career. You're too young. Oh, you don't have enough experience. This is really demanding work. But what everyone really means is that they can't imagine a woman handling it. My dad taught me that tools don't care what gender you are. Engines don't care. Physics doesn't care. Only people care, and usually for all the wrong reasons." Thomas felt heat creep up his neck. He prided himself on running a fair operation, on judging people based on merit. But there was something about her accusation that stung, because maybe, just maybe, there was a kernel of truth in it. "Listen," he said, fighting to keep his voice even. "I've got 3 master mechanics working on that Shelby over there, and they've been stumped for weeks. If you're as good as you say you are, why don't you tell me what's wrong with it?" But it was a challenge, and they both knew it. Thomas expected her to back down, to make some excuse and leave. Instead, Jamie's eyes moved to the Shelby, and he saw something change in her posture. She walked past him without asking permission, setting her tool bag down beside the car. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the open hood. Thomas nodded, curious despite himself. Jamie leaned over the engine bay, her hands moving carefully over the various components without touching anything. She studied the modifications, the wiring, the fuel system. After about 5 minutes, she straightened up and turned to face him. "Whoever worked on this before tried to upgrade the carburetor but didn't account for the fuel pressure requirements," she said. "They also installed an aftermarket ignition system that's not properly calibrated for the engine's timing. The result is a timing advance that's all wrong, causing the backfiring and power loss your mechanics have probably been chasing. On top of that, the exhaust headers are creating back pressure because they're not matched to the cam profile. You'd need to recalibrate the entire fuel delivery system, reset the ignition timing, and probably replace those headers with something properly spec'd." The silence that followed was deafening. Thomas stared at her, and from the corner of his eye, he could see his mechanics had stopped working and were watching the exchange. Marcus Chen, his head mechanic and a man with 30 years of experience, walked over slowly. He'd been working on the Shelby longer than anyone. "That's actually not a bad assessment," Marcus said slowly, and Thomas could hear the surprise in his voice. "We've been focusing on the ignition system, but we hadn't considered the relationship between all those components." Thomas felt something uncomfortable twist in his chest, a mixture of embarrassment and stubborn pride. "Identifying problems is one thing," he said. "Fixing them is another. And even if you're right, Ms. Sullivan, it doesn't change the fact that you're not qualified for this position." Jamie's expression hardened. She picked up her tool bag and slung it over her shoulder. "Not qualified," she repeated softly. "Right. Well, thank you for your time, Mr. Morrison." She turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Thomas watched her go, telling himself he'd made the right decision, the professional decision. This was business, not a charity. He couldn't afford to take chances on unproven talent, no matter how confident they seemed. "Boss," Marcus said quietly, "maybe we should—" "Get back to work," Thomas cut him off. "That Shelby needs to be ready by Friday." Marcus hesitated, then nodded, and returned to the car. But as Thomas watched his team resume their work, he couldn't shake the image of Jamie Sullivan's face, the disappointment barely masked by determination, the set of her jaw that said she was used to being underestimated. The rest of the morning passed slowly. Thomas tried to focus on paperwork in his office, but his mind kept drifting back to the conversation. Around noon, his phone rang. It was Gerald Hastings, the owner of the Shelby. "Tom, I'm calling to check on my car." Gerald's voice was tense. "It's been 3 weeks. What's the hold-up?" Thomas rubbed his temples. Gerald was a good client, had been for years, but he was also impatient and particular. "We're making progress, Gerald. It's a complex issue, multiple systems interacting in unexpected ways. My team is on it." "Your team has been on it for 3 weeks. I'm starting to think maybe I should take it somewhere else. I've heard good things about that place in Ann Arbor." "That won't be necessary," Thomas said quickly. Morrison Auto Works had a reputation, and losing a client to a competitor would be a blow he couldn't afford, especially not in the current economy. "I promise you we'll have it sorted out. Give us until the end of the week." "End of the week, Tom. That's it. I've got a car show in 2 weeks, and I need that Shelby running perfectly." The line went dead. Thomas set down his phone and stared at the ceiling of his office. Through the window that looked down onto the shop floor, he could see his mechanics still gathered around the Shelby, their body language frustrated and defeated. That afternoon, as the Detroit sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Thomas found himself thinking about his own father. John Morrison had started this business in 1981, back when Detroit was still reeling from the automotive industry's collapse. John had been tough, uncompromising, but he'd also been fair. He'd given Thomas a chance when he was just 19, barely out of high school, teaching him everything about running a shop. "People will surprise you if you let them," his father used to say. "The trick is knowing when to let them try." Thomas had been so certain he was making the right call with Jamie Sullivan. She was young, inexperienced in high-end work. And yes, maybe her being a woman had factored into his assessment more than he wanted to admit. But what if his father had looked at 19-year-old Thomas the same way? What if John Morrison had decided he wasn't qualified? The thought bothered him more than he expected. As the day shift ended and his mechanics filed out, Marcus stopped by Thomas's office. "We're not going to make Friday," Marcus said bluntly. "I'm sorry, boss. We've tried everything we can think of. That girl this morning, Jamie, what she said made sense. We recalibrated the timing based on her assessment, and the engine runs smoother, but there's still something off. We need fresh eyes on this, or we need to tell Mr. Hastings we can't do it." Those words, "we can't do it," were not in Morrison Auto Works' vocabulary. Thomas had built his reputation on solving the unsolvable, on taking the jobs other shops refused. Admitting defeat wasn't an option. "Go home, Marcus. Get some rest. We'll figure it out tomorrow." After Marcus left, Thomas sat alone in his office as darkness fell over Detroit. The streetlights flickered on outside, casting pools of yellow light across the empty parking lot. He thought about Jamie Sullivan, wondered where she was now, whether she'd already found another job, or whether his dismissal had added to whatever collection of rejections she'd accumulated over the years. His phone buzzed. A text from Rick, his assistant manager. "Heard you sent away the Sullivan girl. She was promising. Thought you might want to know. She stopped by Quick Fix this afternoon and quit her job there. Said she was tired of being treated like she didn't belong in this industry. Thought she'd try something different. Maybe teaching or school. Seemed pretty defeated. Just FYI." Thomas read the message 3 times. Jamie had quit her job. Because of him. Because this was the final straw in a long line of people telling her she wasn't good enough. The uncomfortable feeling in his chest grew stronger, more insistent. He stood up and walked down to Bay 7. The Shelby sat there in the dim emergency lighting, beautiful and broken. He thought about his father, about chances and surprises, about pride and prejudice. Then he pulled out his phone and opened his contacts. Rick's message had included Jamie's information. His finger hovered over the call button for a long moment. "What are you doing, Morrison?" his inner voice asked. "You made your decision. Stick with it." But another voice, one that sounded a lot like his father's, whispered back, "Or admit you might have been wrong." He pressed the call button. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. He was about to hang up when he heard her voice. "Hello? Ms. Sullivan? This is Thomas Morrison from Morrison Auto Works. Do you have a minute to talk?" Jamie Sullivan sat on the worn couch in her small apartment in Highland Park, staring at her phone like it might suddenly transform into something else. Thomas Morrison's voice on the other end of the line was careful, measured, nothing like the dismissive tone he'd used that morning. "Ms. Sullivan," he repeated. "Are you there?" "I'm here," she said, trying to keep the bitterness out of her voice. "What can I do for you, Mr. Morrison?" Through the phone, she heard him take a deep breath. "I wanted to apologize for this morning. I wasn't fair to you, and I'm calling because I'd like to make you an offer." Jamie stood up and walked to the window of her second-floor apartment. Outside, the neighborhood was settling into evening. A group of kids played basketball under a streetlight, their laughter carrying up through the November air. This area of Detroit had seen better days. Many of the buildings showed signs of neglect, windows boarded up, paint peeling. But there was life here still, persistence, the kind of stubborn determination she recognized in herself. "An offer," she said flatly. "What kind of offer?" "The Shelby you looked at this morning. My team is stuck. I mean really stuck. We've got until Friday to have it running perfectly, and I'm starting to think we might not make it. You identified issues in 5 minutes that we'd been struggling with for weeks. I was impressed, even if I didn't show it. So you want me to tell you how to fix it?" Jamie said. "For free, I'm guessing." "No." Thomas's voice was firm. "I want to hire you to fix it, temporarily at first. Prove yourself on this job, and we'll talk about something permanent. The pay would be $28 an hour during the trial period, with benefits and a raise to $35 if you're brought on full-time." Jamie's breath caught. $28 an hour was almost double what she'd been making at Quick Fix. It was the kind of money that could change things, could help her save up for her own place instead of this cramped apartment, could let her finally stop worrying about whether she'd make rent each month. But there was something else beneath the offer, something that felt like charity or pity, and Jamie had never accepted either. "Why the sudden change of heart?" she asked. "This morning I wasn't qualified. What's different now?" She heard Thomas sigh. "This morning I was being stubborn, and maybe prejudiced. I've been running this shop for 20 years, and I've always prided myself on hiring the best, but I realize I might have been limiting what the best looks like. My assistant manager told me you quit your job today, said you seemed defeated. That bothered me more than I expected." Jamie closed her eyes. Rick had always been kind to her at Quick Fix, one of the few people who treated her like she actually knew what she was doing. Of course he'd reached out. "Mr. Morrison, I appreciate the offer, but I need to know this isn't just about you feeling guilty. If I come work for you, even temporarily, I need to know you'll actually give me a fair shot, that you won't be looking over my shoulder the whole time, waiting for me to fail so you can say, 'I told you so.'" "You have my word," Thomas said, and there was something in his voice that made her want to believe him. "Come in tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., We'll get you set up and you can show us what you can do. If it doesn't work out, no hard feelings, and I'll give you a good reference for wherever you go next. But I think it will work out. I think you're exactly what we need." After she hung up, Jamie sat in silence for a long time. Her apartment was small, just a living room, kitchenette, bedroom, and bathroom. But it was hers. The walls were decorated with photographs of her father in his garage, pictures of cars they'd worked on together, and a framed letter from the automotive program at Wayne County Community College, where she'd finished top of her class. Her father, Daniel Sullivan, smiled out from one of the photos, his arm around a teenage Jamie as they stood beside a restored 1969 Camaro. That had been their last project together before the heart attack that took him. She touched the frame gently. "What do you think, Dad?" she whispered. "Is this a mistake?" But she knew what he would say. He'd always told her that you couldn't let fear or pride stop you from taking chances. "The worst thing you can do," he'd said once, "is let someone else's doubts become your own." That night, Jamie barely slept. She kept running through everything she knew about Shelby GT500s, about fuel systems and ignition timing, about all the ways a restoration could go wrong. By the time her alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., she'd been awake for hours. She dressed carefully. Clean jeans, a Morrison Auto Works t-shirt she'd bought online late last night. She wanted to look the part, and her steel-toed boots that had been resoled twice but still had plenty of life left in them. She gathered her tools, checking each one like a soldier checking weapons before battle: socket wrenches, screwdrivers, multimeter, timing light, compression tester. Everything she might need. The drive from Highland Park to Morrison Auto Works took 30 minutes in the pre-dawn darkness. Detroit was just beginning to wake up, delivery trucks making their rounds, early shift workers heading to factories that still operated in the industrial zones. The city had a reputation for being dead, for being a symbol of American decline, but Jamie had always seen something else: resilience, the ability to adapt and survive and rebuild. She pulled into the Morrison Auto Works parking lot at 6:45 a.m. Several vehicles were already there, including a silver BMW that she guessed belonged to Thomas Morrison. The building looked different in the early morning light, less imposing somehow, more like what it was, a working shop full of tools and people trying to do good work. Thomas was waiting for her in the lobby, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He offered her one. "Figured you might need this," he said. Jamie took it gratefully. "Thank you." He led her through the facility, and in the daylight she could see the full scope of Morrison Auto Works. There were 8 repair bays, each equipped with state-of-the-art lifts and diagnostic equipment. Classic cars in various states of repair occupied most of the bays: a 1963 Corvette, a 1970 Plymouth Barracuda, a gleaming 1955 Thunderbird. Along one wall, shelves held organized parts, each labeled and catalogued with a precision that impressed her. "We've got a team of 12 mechanics," Thomas explained as they walked. "Marcus Chen is the head mechanic. You met him yesterday. He's been with me since the beginning, taught me half of what I know. Then there's Roberto Diaz, specializes in electrical systems. Lisa Park handles bodywork and paint. Everyone here is top-notch at what they do." They reached Bay 7, where the Shelby waited like a patient in an operating room. In the early morning light streaming through the high windows, Jamie could see the car's lines, the beauty of its design, the potential it represented. "She's all yours," Thomas said. "Whatever you need, just ask. Marcus will be in around 7:30, and I've told the team to give you space to work, but to be available if you need assistance." Jamie set down her tool bag and walked around the Shelby slowly, taking it in from every angle. The car had been partially disassembled, hood off, intake manifold removed, wiring exposed. Her assessment from yesterday had been based on a quick visual inspection, but now she needed to dig deeper to confirm her theories and find whatever else might be hiding. "Mr. Morrison," she said, turning to face him, "I'm going to need the complete work order history on this car, every modification that was attempted, every part that was replaced, everything your team has tried. And I'll need the original specs for a 67 GT500, compression ratios, timing curves, fuel pressure specs, all of it." Thomas nodded, looking impressed. "I'll have it printed out for you within 10 minutes. Anything else?" "Yes, when I'm working, I need you to trust me. I know that's asking a lot, especially after just one day, but I can't do my best work if I'm worried about being second-guessed on every decision." For a moment, Thomas looked like he might argue. Then his expression softened. "You've got it. This is your show. Just keep me updated on your progress." After he left, Jamie stood alone with the Shelby. She took a deep breath, then smiled. This was what she'd been waiting for. A real challenge, a chance to prove herself on something that mattered. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. The first thing she did was exactly what Marcus and his team had probably done: a complete diagnostic check of every system. She tested the compression in each cylinder, checked the valve timing, measured fuel pressure at various points in the system. Everything she did, she documented carefully in a notebook, building a complete picture of the car's condition. By the time Marcus arrived at 7:30, Jamie was underneath the Shelby on a creeper, examining the exhaust system with a flashlight. "Morning," Marcus called out. "How's it going?" Jamie rolled out from under the car, blinking in the overhead lights. Marcus Chen was in his late 50s, with grey hair and the kind of weathered hands that came from decades of hard work. His expression was neutral, but not unfriendly. "Morning," Jamie replied, sitting up. "I'm glad you're here, actually. I wanted to ask you something. When you were trying to diagnose the timing issues, did you check the distributor advance mechanism?" Marcus frowned. "We tested the electronic ignition system. Yeah, it was functioning within normal parameters." "But did you physically check the mechanical advance in the distributor?" Jamie pressed. "Sometimes those springs can wear out or break, and the electronic system won't catch it because it's measuring electrical signals, not mechanical function." She could see the moment it clicked in Marcus's mind. His eyes widened slightly. "No," he said slowly. "We didn't. We assumed since the electronic system checked out." "It's an easy thing to miss," Jamie said, standing up and brushing off her jeans. "I'm not saying that's definitely the problem, but it's worth checking. Combined with the fuel pressure issues and the header mismatch, it could explain why the car runs okay at low RPMs but struggles under load." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, and Jamie felt herself tense, waiting for dismissal or condescension. Instead, he smiled. "Let's pull that distributor," he said. "I've got some spare springs in my toolbox if we need them." They worked together for the next 3 hours, and Jamie found herself relaxing. Marcus treated her like a colleague, not a subordinate or an oddity. When she had an idea, he listened. When he suggested something, she considered it. It was the kind of collaborative work her father had always talked about. People with different experiences and perspectives coming together to solve problems. Around 11 a.m., they had the distributor apart on a workbench. Jamie's suspicion had been correct. 2 of the advance springs were broken, and the weights that controlled timing advance were sticking. It was a small thing, easily overlooked, but it had massive implications for how the engine performed. "I'll be damned," Marcus said softly. 3 weeks we worked on this car, and we missed something this basic." "It's not basic," Jamie said quickly. "It's easy to miss because the symptoms could be caused by a dozen different things. You and your team did good work. You eliminated all the obvious possibilities. Sometimes you just need fresh eyes." "Or younger eyes," Marcus said with a grin. "I think my vision's not what it used to be, but seriously, good catch, Jamie. Really good catch." By mid-afternoon, they had the distributor rebuilt and reinstalled. Jamie spent another hour recalibrating the timing, adjusting the fuel pressure regulator, and fine-tuning the idle mixture. At 3 p.m., with Thomas and several other mechanics watching, she turned the key. The Shelby's engine roared to life, and it sounded perfect, the deep, throaty rumble that high-performance V8s were famous for, smooth and powerful. Jamie let it idle for a minute, watching all the gauges, then gradually increased the RPMs. The engine responded beautifully, no hesitation, no backfiring, just pure mechanical symphony. She shut it down and climbed out of the car, her heart pounding. The shop was silent for a moment, and then Marcus started clapping. The other mechanics joined in, and even Thomas was smiling. "Well done, Ms. Sullivan," Thomas said, walking over to shake her hand. "Very well done. We'll need to do a full road test to be completely sure, but I think you just saved us from a very embarrassing situation with Mr. Hastings." Jamie felt warmth spread through her chest, pride, relief, and something else she couldn't quite name. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Morrison," she said. "Thomas," he corrected. "And thank you for making me look like less of an idiot for nearly turning you away." That evening, as the day shift wound down, Thomas called Jamie into his office. She sat across from him, suddenly nervous again. The adrenaline of the successful repair had worn off, and now reality was setting in. This was still a trial period. This was still one car, one job. "I've been thinking," Thomas began, leaning back in his chair, "about what I said last night on the phone. About this being temporary, I don't want to do that. I want to hire you full-time, starting Monday, $35 an hour, full benefits, and we'll get you set up with your own bay once you're comfortable. What do you say? Jamie opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Are you sure? I mean, it's only been one day. It's been one very impressive day, Thomas said. And more than that, I watched you work with Marcus today. You were collaborative, willing to listen, but also confident in your knowledge. That's exactly the kind of person I want on my team. So yes, I'm sure. Unless you need time to think about it? Jamie laughed, a sound of pure joy that surprised even her. No, I don't need time. I accept. Thank you, Thomas. You won't regret this. I know I won't, he said, standing and extending his hand again. As Jamie left the office and walked out into the Detroit evening, she felt lighter than she had in years. The city stretched out around her, lights beginning to twinkle as darkness fell, and for the first time since her father's death, she felt like she was building something, not just cars, but a life, a career, a future. She pulled out her phone and sent a text to Rick at Quick Fix. Got the job at Morrison's, full time. Thank you for believing in me. His response came almost immediately. Told you so. Now go show them what you're made of. Jamie smiled and headed for her car. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new cars to fix, new opportunities to prove herself. But tonight, she allowed herself to simply feel proud. She'd earned this, and she was going to make the most of it. 3 months had passed since Jamie Sullivan joined Morrison Auto Works, and in that time, the shop had become something more than just a workplace. It had become a second home. She'd settled into a rhythm with the team, earning respect not through words, but through consistent, excellent work. Marcus had become a mentor, teaching her the finer points of classic car restoration. Lisa Park had shown her advanced bodywork techniques. Roberto Diaz had spent hours with her on complex electrical systems in vintage vehicles. But it was mid-February now, and Detroit was in the grip of a brutal winter. Ice coated the streets, and the temperature hadn't risen above 20 degrees in 2 weeks. Jamie arrived at the shop each morning in darkness, and left in darkness. The shortened winter days matching the increasingly tense atmosphere at Morrison Auto Works. The financial pressure had been building for months, though Thomas had tried to keep it from affecting the team. The automotive industry was in transition. Electric vehicles were gaining ground, and the market for classic car restoration, while passionate, was shrinking. Several long-time clients had postponed projects, citing economic uncertainty. 2 major jobs had fallen through at the last minute. The shop's revenue had declined by 30% over the past quarter. Jamie first became aware of the severity of the situation on a Tuesday morning in mid-February. She arrived at 6:30 a.m., earlier than usual, wanting to get a head start on a particularly challenging project, a 1971 Plymouth Hemi Cuda that needed a complete engine rebuild. As she entered through the side door, she heard voices coming from Thomas's office. The door was slightly ajar, and she recognized Thomas's voice along with someone else's. "Tom, I'm not trying to pressure you, but the bank needs to see some movement on this," the unfamiliar voice said. "You're 3 months behind on the loan payments. They're talking about foreclosure." Jamie froze, her hand on the door handle. "I understand that, Phil," Thomas replied, and his voice sounded tired in a way Jamie had never heard before. "But I need time. Spring is coming, the show season is starting up, and I've got 3 major projects that should close in the next 2 months. That's over $200,000 in revenue. If those projects close... Tom, you and I have been friends for 20 years. I don't want to see you lose this place, but you need to have a backup plan. Have you considered selling?" "Selling?" Thomas's voice rose. "This is my father's legacy, Phil. I can't just sell it. Better to sell it than lose it to the bank. Just think about it. There are companies that would pay good money for this facility and your client list. You could probably clear your debts and walk away with enough to retire comfortably. Jamie quietly closed the outer door and walked back outside, her mind reeling. Morrison Auto Works was in trouble, real trouble. And suddenly her job security, which had felt so solid just yesterday, seemed as fragile as the ice coating the parking lot. She sat in her car for 10 minutes, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and orange over Detroit's skyline. The city was beautiful in winter, in its own harsh way. The industrial buildings looked like monuments to a bygone era, survivors of economic collapse and urban decay. Jamie had always admired that about Detroit. It kept going, kept fighting, even when everyone said it was finished. Finally, she went back inside. The conversation in Thomas's office had ended, and when she passed by, the door was closed. She went to Bay 3 where the CUDA waited and tried to lose herself in work, but her mind kept drifting back to what she'd overheard. Over the next few days, she noticed things she'd missed before. Thomas, looking worn and worried. Marcus and some of the senior mechanics having quiet conversations that stopped when she approached. A general tension in the shop that hadn't been there before. On Friday afternoon, Thomas called a meeting in the main bay. All 12 mechanics gathered, along with the administrative staff. Jamie stood near the back, next to Lisa Park, who looked as concerned as Jamie felt. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," Thomas began, his voice echoing in the large space. "We're going through a tough financial period. The industry is changing, and we're feeling the impact. I want to be transparent with all of you, because you deserve to know what we're facing." He went on to explain the revenue decline, the postponed projects, the financial pressures. He didn't mention the loan default or the possibility of foreclosure, but Jamie suspected those details weren't far from his mind. "I'm not laying anyone off," Thomas said firmly. "That's not happening. But I am asking all of you to help me save this company. We need to be more efficient, we need to deliver exceptional work faster, and we need to find ways to bring in new business. If anyone has ideas, I'm all ears. This place," his voice caught slightly, "this place is more than just a business to me. It's my father's dream, and I'll be damned if I let it die on my watch." The meeting broke up slowly, mechanics dispersing to their respective bays in subdued clusters. Jamie remained where she was, thinking hard. There had to be something they could do, some way to help, but what could a mechanic do about financial problems? That evening, as most of the crew was leaving, Jamie approached Marcus in the break room. He was gathering his things, his movements slow and weary. "Marcus, can I talk to you for a minute?" He looked up and she saw the worry in his eyes. "Sure, Jamie. What's on your mind?" "I overheard something the other day," she admitted, "about the bank and foreclosure. Is it really that bad?" Marcus sighed and sat down heavily on one of the old couches. "Yeah, it's that bad. Tom's been trying to handle it on his own, trying to protect us from worrying. But the truth is, we're in serious trouble. If we don't turn things around in the next 2 months, we might lose everything." "There has to be something we can do," Jamie said, sitting down across from him. "We're a good shop. We do incredible work. Why can't we get more business?" "It's not about the quality of our work," Marcus explained. "It's about the market. Classic car restoration is a luxury service, and when the economy gets uncertain, luxuries are the first thing people cut. Plus, we're competing with shops that charge less, use cheaper parts, cut corners. We refuse to do that, which means we're often more expensive." Jamie chewed her lip, thinking, what about diversifying, taking on different kinds of work? Like what? Well, what about modern performance cars? There's a huge market for tuning and customization. Cars like the new Mustangs, Camaros. Challengers, people who want more power, better handling, custom work. It's not the same as classic restoration, but it's similar skills. Marcus looked thoughtful. Tom's always been resistant to that. He sees Morrison's as a classic car specialist, says that's our brand, our identity. But brands can evolve, Jamie argued, and if the choice is between evolving and closing, I know which one I'd pick. The skills are transferable. We've got the equipment, we've got the expertise, we just need to market ourselves differently. You should talk to Tom about this, Marcus said. He might actually listen to you. You're the fresh perspective around here. Jamie wasn't sure about that, but she resolved to try. The shop had given her a chance when she needed one most. Now it was her turn to return the favor. The opportunity came the following Monday. Jamie was working late on the CUDA. The engine rebuild was taking longer than expected when she heard footsteps behind her. Thomas appeared, looking tired but carrying 2 bottles of beer. "Thought you might want one," he said, offering her a bottle. "You've been working hard." Jamie accepted it gratefully. "Thanks. Just trying to get this CUDA finished. The owner's been patient, but I know he's eager to see it done." Thomas nodded and leaned against the workbench. For a few minutes they stood in companionable silence, the only sounds the hum of the building's heating system and the distant traffic outside. "Thomas," Jamie finally said, "I want to talk to you about something, about the shop's situation." He looked at her sharply. "How much do you know?" "Enough," she said. "And I have an idea. What if we started taking on modern performance work? Tuning, customization, upgrades for newer muscle cars and sports cars. There's a huge market for it, and we have the skills and equipment. It could bring in revenue while the classic car market recovers." Thomas was quiet for a long time. "My father started this shop specifically for classic car restoration. That's what Morrison Auto Works means. If we start doing modern work, aren't we losing our identity? Or," Jamie said gently, "we're expanding it. Your father started this shop to do excellent work on cars that mattered to people. That doesn't have to mean just old cars. A guy with a brand new Mustang GT loves his car just as much as someone with a vintage Shelby, and his car matters just as much to him. We'd still be doing what your father believed in. We'd just be doing it for more people." Thomas took a long drink from his beer. "You make a good point. But even if we did this, how would we get the word out? How would we compete with shops that already have that market established?" Jamie had been thinking about this. Social media. We document our work, show the transformations, share the technical details. There are huge communities online of people passionate about performance cars. If we can reach them, show them what we can do, we could build a following. And word of mouth in those communities spreads fast. "Social media," Thomas repeated, looking skeptical. "I don't even have a Facebook account." "Then it's a good thing you hired someone who does," Jamie said with a smile. "Let me try, Thomas. Give me 2 months. Let me take point on bringing in modern performance work, and I'll document everything, build our online presence. Show people what Morrison Auto Works can do. If it doesn't work, we're no worse off than we are now." Thomas studied her face for a long moment. "Why are you doing this? You could probably find another job easily enough if this place closes. Why fight for it?" Jamie thought about her father, about his garage in Flint, about all the people who had doubted her over the years and the few who had given her chances. "Because this place gave me a shot when I needed one. Because you believed in me, even after initially turning me away. And because good things are worth fighting for, even when, especially when, the odds are against you. My dad taught me that. This shop, what you've built here, it's good. It's worth saving." Thomas's eyes were suspiciously bright. He held out his hand. "Okay, 2 months. Show me what you can do." Jamie shook his hand, and as she did, she felt the weight of what she'd just taken on. She'd never run a marketing campaign before, had never tried to build a business's online presence, but she'd also never let fear stop her from trying something new. That night, she went home and started researching. She looked at successful automotive shops on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. She studied what made their content engaging, how they showcased their work, how they built communities around their brand. She took notes until 3 a.m, ideas flowing faster than she could write them down. The next day, she presented her plan to Thomas and Marcus. She proposed they start documenting every job from start to finish, creating time-lapse videos and detailed photo galleries. She suggested they offer a Feature Friday, where they highlighted a completed project each week. She wanted to start a blog with technical articles that would establish them as experts. She proposed they sponsor a local car club and attend meets to network. "It's ambitious," Marcus said when she finished presenting, "but I think it could work." "We'd need to invest some money in equipment," Thomas said. "Cameras, lighting, someone who knows how to edit video." "I can learn video editing," Jamie said. "There are free programs and YouTube tutorials for everything. For cameras, we could start with just high-quality phone cameras. We don't need to be perfect right away. We just need to be authentic and show the quality of our work." Thomas looked between Jamie and Marcus, then at the sketches and notes Jamie had spread across his desk. Finally, he nodded. "Let's do it. Jamie, you're in charge of this initiative. Marcus, I want you to work with her, help identify which projects would make good content. Everyone else keeps doing what they do best, exceptional work. If this is going to succeed, it'll be because people see what we're capable of." As Jamie left the office, her heart was pounding with a mixture of excitement and terror. She'd just volunteered to save the company. Now she had to actually do it. Over the next 3 weeks, Jamie threw herself into the project with everything she had. She learned video editing software, staying up until 2 or 3 a.m. most nights, watching tutorials and practicing. She started an Instagram account for Morrison Auto Works and began posting daily content, behind the scenes, shots of work in progress, time-lapses of repairs, before and after comparisons. She wrote blog posts about common issues with popular performance cars, about the difference between cheap modifications and quality work, about the engineering behind various performance upgrades. She cross-posted everything to Facebook and started a YouTube channel where she uploaded longer videos showing complete builds. The response was slow at first, a few likes, a handful of followers. But Jamie kept at it, posting consistently, engaging with comments, sharing her genuine enthusiasm for the work. She joined online car communities and contributed helpful advice without overtly advertising the shop. She wanted to build trust first, business second. Meanwhile, the shop's financial situation continued to deteriorate. Another major client postponed their project indefinitely. The bank sent a formal notice of default. Thomas looked more haggard each day, though he tried to hide it from the crew. Then, in the 3rd week of March, something changed. Jamie posted a video of a complete engine rebuild on a 2018 Dodge Challenger, a car they'd taken on as a favor for a friend of Marcus's. The video showed the transformation from a stock engine to a highly modified, high-performance build. She detailed every upgrade, explained the reasoning behind each choice, showed the dyno results. The video got 50 views the first day, then 100. Then, 2 days later, Jamie checked the analytics and saw it had jumped to 5,000 views. Someone with a large following had shared it, and suddenly the Morrison Auto Works YouTube channel was blowing up. Comments poured in. "This is exactly the kind of quality work I've been looking for. Where is this shop located? I'd drive across the country to have these guys work on my car." Finally, a shop that explains what they're doing and why. With the views came inquiries. People wanted quotes for work. They wanted to know if Morrison's could handle their projects. Within a week, Jamie had a list of 20 serious inquiries for modern performance work. She brought the list to Thomas on a cold March morning, laying it on his desk with a smile. 20 potential projects, she said. Average value about $8,000 each. That's $160,000 in potential revenue. Thomas stared at the list, then at Jamie, then back at the list. When did this happen? The internet works fast when you give people something they want, Jamie said. These are all people who love their cars and want quality work. They're willing to pay for expertise. And they found us because we showed them what we're capable of. Over the next 2 weeks, 5 of those inquiries converted to actual jobs. Deposits were made. Work was scheduled. The financial pressure began to ease, just slightly, but enough to breathe. Thomas called another shop meeting in mid-March. This time, the atmosphere was different. "I want to thank all of you for sticking with me through these tough months," he said. "And I especially want to thank Jamie Sullivan for taking the initiative to find us a path forward. Because of her work, we have new business coming in, our online presence is growing, and I believe Morrison Auto Works has a future." The mechanics applauded, and Jamie felt her face flush with pride and embarrassment. But as she looked around at the faces of her colleagues, people who had become friends, who had taught her so much, she realized something important. She hadn't saved the shop alone. She'd done it with the support of Marcus, with the skills Lisa had taught her about presenting work visually, with the technical knowledge Roberto had shared that made her content authoritative. This was what teamwork really meant. Not just working alongside each other, but lifting each other up, combining strengths, fighting together for something that mattered. That evening, as Jamie was leaving the shop, Thomas stopped her in the parking lot. "I owe you an apology," he said, "not just for that first day when I turned you away, but for almost giving up. You reminded me that this place is worth fighting for. Thank you." Jamie smiled. "You gave me a chance when I needed one. I'm just returning the favor." As she drove home through the Detroit streets, past the old factories and the new developments, past neighborhoods struggling to revive and areas already reborn, Jamie thought about resilience, about how the hardest times revealed what people and places were really made of. Morrison Auto Works was going to survive, and she was going to be part of that survival story. April arrived in Detroit with the kind of weather that made people forget winter had ever existed. The temperature climbed into the 60s, trees began budding, and the city seemed to shake off its grey coat and remember it was alive. At Morrison Auto Works, the transformation was even more dramatic. The shop floor buzzed with activity. Bay 7 held a 20-20 Ford Mustang GT that was getting a complete supercharger installation and suspension upgrade. Bay 3 still had the Plymouth Cuda, finally nearing completion after months of meticulous work. Bay 5 had a 1969 Chevelle that was being restored for a collector in California. And Bay 2, the bay that had been assigned to Jamie as her primary workspace, contained a project that had everyone in the shop excited. A 2019 Dodge Challenger SRT Hellcat that was being built for a professional race team. The Hellcat project had come through Jamie's social media efforts. The racing team had seen Morrison's videos, been impressed by the technical expertise and attention to detail, and reached out about building a car for their Pro Touring series. It was a $40,000 job, the largest single project the shop had landed in over a year. Jamie stood beside the Hellcat on a Thursday morning in mid-April, reviewing her build sheet with Marcus. They'd already stripped down the interior, removed the stock suspension, and begun the process of transforming the already powerful vehicle into something capable of competing at the highest levels. "The roll cage specs came in from the team," Marcus said, handing her a thick folder. "They're particular about the design. Needs to meet SCCA regulations, but also their own internal safety standards." Jamie flipped through the documents, noting the measurements and specifications. This is going to be tight. The clearances they want mean we'll need to custom fabricate several connection points. Can you handle it? Marcus asked, but his tone made it clear he already knew the answer. Absolutely, Jamie said, though I might need Roberto's help with the wiring harness once we get the cage installed. Some of these sensors are going to require relocating. Marcus nodded. He's available. This build is priority 1 for the whole shop. The exposure we get from this could lead to more racing team contracts. As Marcus walked away, Jamie allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. 5 months ago, she'd been working at Quick Fix doing oil changes and tire rotations. Now she was leading a build for a professional racing team. The journey felt both impossibly long and remarkably quick. The door to the shop opened, and Jamie glanced up to see Thomas entering with another man. She recognized him immediately from his social media presence, Derek Chen, a popular automotive YouTuber with over 2 million subscribers. Her heart rate kicked up. Derek's channel focused on high-performance builds and shop tours. If he was here... "Jamie!" Thomas called out. "Can you come over here for a minute?" She set down her tools and walked over, wiping her hands on a rag. Derek Chen was in his mid-30s, wearing a designer hoodie and carrying professional camera equipment. "Jamie Sullivan, this is Derek Chen," Thomas said, and she could hear the barely contained excitement in his voice. "Derek reached out last week about doing a feature on our shop for his channel. I've been giving him a tour, and he's particularly interested in the Hellcat build." Derek extended his hand. "Great to meet you, Jamie. I've been following your shop's Instagram for about 6 weeks now. The content you guys post is exactly what my audience loves. Detailed, technical, authentic. When I saw you were building a car for Torres Racing, I knew I had to come check it out in person." "That's... wow," Jamie said, momentarily lost for words. "I watch your channel. Your series on turbocharger systems is incredible." Derek grinned. "Thanks. Listen, I'd love to do a walkthrough of the Hellcat build with you, get into the technical details, show my audience what goes into a professional racing build. Would you be comfortable being on camera?" Jamie looked at Thomas, who nodded encouragingly. "Sure," she said. "I'd be honored." They spent the next 3 hours filming. Derek was professional and knowledgeable, asking intelligent questions that gave Jamie the opportunity to explain not just what they were doing, but why they were doing it. They discussed suspension geometry, weight distribution, power-to-weight ratios, the importance of proper roll cage design for driver safety. Between takes, Derek pulled Jamie aside. "Can I be honest with you? When I first started looking into Morrison Auto Works, I was skeptical. A lot of shops do good work, but present it poorly online. But your content is different. It's clear you actually understand what you're doing, and you're able to communicate that understanding. That's rare. Plus, seeing a young woman leading a project like this, that matters. There are a lot of young women who want to get into automotive work but don't see themselves represented. You're changing that." His words hit Jamie harder than she expected. She thought about all the times she'd been dismissed, all the times she'd been told she didn't belong, all the times she'd doubted herself. "I never really thought about it that way," she admitted. "I'm just doing the work I love." "That's exactly why it matters," Derek said. "You're not performing or trying to be a role model. You're just being yourself and doing excellent work. Trust me, that resonates with people." The video Derek filmed at Morrison Auto Works went live on his channel 2 weeks later. Jamie watched it at home on her laptop, nervous and excited. The title read, "Inside Morrison Auto Works, the Young Mechanic Building, a 1000 HP Hellcat race car." The video was 23 minutes long, and Derek had edited it beautifully. There was Jamie explaining suspension geometry with confidence and clarity. There was the shop, looking professional and impressive. There were shots of the other mechanics working on their projects, showing the breadth of Morrison's capabilities. But what struck Jamie most was seeing herself through Derek's camera. She looked competent, professional, passionate. She looked like she belonged there. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 24 hours, the video had over 100,000 views. Comments poured in. Finally, someone showing that women can be just as good as men in the shop. This is the kind of quality content I come to YouTube for. Technical, detailed, authentic. A Morrison Auto Works just earned a new customer. I'm calling them about my Camaro build. Jamie explains things so clearly, you can tell she really knows her stuff. The video's impact on the shop was immediate. Inquiries flooded in, so many that Thomas had to hire an administrative assistant just to handle the requests for quotes. Several were from out of state, people willing to ship their cars to Detroit for Morrison's expertise. But the video also attracted attention of a different kind. On a Tuesday afternoon in early May, Jamie was working on the Hellcat's wiring harness when Thomas called her into his office. Sitting across from his desk was a woman in her mid-40s, professionally dressed, with sharp eyes and a confident demeanor. "Jamie, this is Michelle Rodriguez," Thomas said. "She's a producer for Motor Week, the television program." Jamie's eyebrows shot up. Motor Week had been on the air for decades, one of the most respected automotive programs on television. Michelle stood and shook Jamie's hand firmly. "I'll get right to the point. We're developing a new segment for next season called New Voices in Automotive. Andre, it's meant to highlight people who are bringing fresh perspectives to the industry. We'd like to feature you and Morrison Auto Works. It would be a multi-episode arc, following the completion of the Hellcat build and also profiling you personally, your background, your journey, what you represent for the future of automotive work." Jamie sat down slowly. "You want to do a television feature on me?" "On you and this shop," Michelle clarified. "Derek Chen's video brought you to our attention, but when we did our research, we found something compelling. You're young, you're talented, you've overcome significant obstacles, and you're part of a shop that's successfully adapting to a changing industry. That's a story worth telling." Jamie looked at Thomas, who was smiling. "It's your decision," he said, "but I think it would be great for you and for the shop." The filming for Motor Week began in mid-May and continued through June. It was more invasive than Derek's single-day shoot. Cameras following Jamie at work, at home, interviewing her about her father, her struggles, her victories. They interviewed Thomas about taking a chance on her. They talked to Marcus about working alongside her. They even tracked down Rick from Quick Fix, who told them, "I knew from day one she was special. I'm just glad someone finally gave her the opportunity to show it." During the filming, the Hellcat build progressed beautifully. The roll cage went in perfectly. The suspension was dialed in with precision. The engine modifications pushed the car well over 1,000 horsepower. Torres Racing sent their team to check on the progress and were so impressed they immediately contracted Morrison's for 2 more builds. The episode of Motor Week, featuring Jamie and Morrison Auto Works, aired in July. Jamie watched it with her entire crew at a viewing party Thomas hosted at the shop. They'd brought in pizza and beer, set up a projector, and gathered in Bay 1 to watch together. Seeing her story told on national television was surreal. The producers had woven together footage of the Hellcat build with interviews and personal history, creating a narrative that was both inspiring and honest. They hadn't shied away from the difficulties, the initial rejection, the financial struggles, the skepticism she'd faced. But they'd shown how perseverance and skill had overcome those obstacles. When the episode ended, the room was silent for a moment. Then Roberto started clapping, and everyone joined in. Jamie felt tears prick her eyes. "Speech!" Lisa called out. Jamie stood up, wiping her eyes. "I don't really know what to say except thank you. Thomas, you took a chance on me when you had every reason not to. Marcus, Roberto, Lisa, all of you. You taught me, you accepted me, you made me better. This shop isn't successful because of any one person. It's successful because we're a team, because we care about the work, and because we refuse to accept anything less than excellence. I'm proud to be part of that." The applause was deafening. Later, as people were leaving, Thomas pulled Jamie aside. "I have something for you," he said, handing her an envelope. Inside was a contract, a partnership agreement making her a junior partner in Morrison Auto Works, with a path to full partnership over the next 5 years. "You saved this shop," Thomas said simply. "You did it with skill, creativity, and determination. You deserve to own a piece of what you helped build." Jamie couldn't speak. She just hugged him, this man who had almost turned her away, who had become a mentor and friend. The Motor Week episode's impact exceeded even Derek's video. Morrison Auto Works became known nationally as a destination for high-quality performance builds. The waiting list for projects grew to 6 months. Thomas was able to hire 3 new mechanics. The financial problems that had nearly sunk the shop became a memory. But for Jamie, the most meaningful moment came in August, almost a year after she'd first walked into Morrison Auto Works. She was working late on a Friday, putting finishing touches on a custom Camaro build, when she heard someone enter the shop. She looked up to see a young woman, maybe 19 or 20, standing nervously in the doorway. She was dressed in cargo pants and a stained t-shirt, carrying a tool bag that had seen better days. "Can I help you?" Jamie asked, setting down her wrench. "Are you Jamie Sullivan?" the girl asked. "I am. I saw the Motor Week episode, and I've been following your Instagram for months. I'm Angela Vega. I just graduated from the technical program at Macomb Community College, and I've applied for a job here 3 times, but I keep getting told you're not hiring. But I thought maybe if I came in person, if I could talk to you directly." She trailed off, looking embarrassed. "I'm sorry. This is probably stupid. I should go." "Wait," Jamie said, and the girl stopped. Jamie walked closer, seeing herself in Angela's nervous determination. "What kind of work have you done?" "Mostly school projects and some volunteer work at a local garage. Nothing fancy. But I love this work. I love understanding how things work, fixing them, making them better. And seeing you, someone like me, making it in this industry, it made me think maybe I could do it too." Jamie smiled. "Come with me." She led Angela to Bay 2, where the Hellcat that had been featured in Derek's video sat, completed and gleaming. "This was my first major build here. Know what it taught me?" Angela shook her head. "That the people who make it in this industry aren't necessarily the ones who start with the most advantages. They're the ones who refuse to quit, who keep learning, who show up and do the work. You came here 3 times, even after being told no. That tells me something about your determination." She pulled out her phone and sent a quick text to Thomas. "Can you come down to Bay 2? There's someone I want you to meet." 5 minutes later, Thomas appeared. Jamie introduced Angela, explained her situation. "Mr. Morrison," Jamie said, "I'd like to propose we create an apprentice position. Someone who can learn from all of us, who we can train properly. I think Angela would be perfect for it." Thomas looked at Angela, then at Jamie, then back at Angela. "Tell me about the most challenging repair you've done." Angela straightened her shoulders and began describing a project from school, a complete rebuild of a damaged transmission. As she talked, her nervousness faded, replaced by the confidence that came from discussing something she truly understood. When she finished, Thomas nodded. "Okay, apprentice position starting Monday, 8 a.m. Don't be late." Angela's face lit up. "Really, thank you. Thank you so much." After she left, practically floating out the door, Thomas turned to Jamie. "That's the 2nd time you've talked me into hiring someone I wasn't sure about." "First time worked out pretty well," Jamie said with a grin. "Yes, it did," Thomas agreed. "Yes, it did." That night, Jamie drove home through the Detroit streets she'd come to love. The city was alive with summer energy, people out walking, music drifting from open windows, the last light of the long summer day painting everything golden. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, her father's garage in Flint, Quick Fix Auto, and feeling invisible. Walking into Morrison Auto Works and being told she wasn't qualified. The fear and determination that had driven her to prove herself. The people who had believed in her when she'd barely believed in herself. She thought about Angela Vega, just starting out, carrying the same dreams and fears Jamie had carried. And she thought about how she now had the power to do for Angela what Thomas had done for her. Give her a chance, a real chance, to show what she could do. When Jamie pulled into her apartment complex parking lot, she sat in her car for a moment, looking at her reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back was tired but happy, confident but humble. Someone who had fought for what she wanted and won. She pulled out her phone and looked at the last picture she had of her father, taken 2 weeks before his heart attack. He was standing in his garage, wrench in hand, that familiar smile on his face. "I did it, Dad," she whispered. "I made it." But even as she said it, she knew the truth. She hadn't made it in the sense of arriving at some final destination. She'd just found her place, her people, her purpose. The work would continue. There would be more challenges, more obstacles, more opportunities to prove herself. And she couldn't wait. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, Jamie's phone buzzed with notifications. The Morrison Auto Works Instagram account, which she still managed, had gained another 1,000 followers today. There were messages from people asking technical questions, from potential clients, from young mechanics seeking advice. She smiled and put her phone away. Tomorrow she'd answer them. Tomorrow she'd get to work on the next build, mentor Angela, push herself to learn something new. Tomorrow she'd continue building the life and career she'd fought so hard to create. But tonight she'd rest, satisfied in the knowledge that she'd proven something important. That talent and determination mattered more than expectations. That opportunities were worth fighting for, and that sometimes the people who get dismissed at first become the ones who change everything. The young mechanic who wasn't qualified had become the partner who saved the company, and her story was just beginning. The end.